In February 2024, a small capsule the size of a kitchen microwave screamed through Earth's atmosphere at over 25 times the speed of sound. It was on fire, and inside it, carefully sealed in tiny vials, was medicine. Medicine that had never been made on Earth before. This was not a government mission, no NASA badge, no billion-dollar rocket. This was a startup. And what they pulled off that day could quietly become one of the most important moments in the history of modern medicine. This is the story of Varda Space Industries and why the future of your medication might be manufactured 500 kilometers above your head. Here is something the pharmaceutical industry does not advertise. Making drugs is extraordinarily difficult, not just discovering them, actually producing them in a form that works inside the human body. Take something as fundamental as a painkiller. The molecule itself might be simple, but the way it crystallizes, the shape it takes when it solidifies, determines everything: its potency, its stability. How quickly your body absorbs it, whether it even works at all. This is why a single drug can have multiple crystal forms, called polymorphs, and why the wrong one can be completely ineffective. There is a famous case from the 1990s. Abbott Laboratories had a successful HIV treatment called ritonavir. It worked. Doctors trusted it. Then one day, the crystals changed, spontaneously. Across every manufacturing facility worldwide, the new form, called Form Roman II, did not dissolve properly in the body. The drug stopped working. Abbott had to pull it from the market. It took 2 years and hundreds of millions of dollars to solve the problem. That drug was ritonavir, and it is exactly the molecule Varda chose to manufacture first in orbit. To understand why space matters, you need to understand what gravity does to chemistry. On Earth, when molecules are trying to arrange themselves into a crystal, gravity is constantly interfering. It pulls heavier particles downward. It drives convection currents, the same currents you see when you heat water in a pot. These currents create turbulence at the microscopic level. They push molecules around when they should be settling quietly into place. The result is crystals that are irregular, inconsistent, and sometimes the wrong shape entirely. In microgravity, all of that disappears. Without gravity pulling everything downward, there is no sedimentation. There are no convection currents. Molecules can self-organize in ways that are simply impossible on Earth. The crystals that form are larger, more uniform, and more structurally perfect than anything achievable in a terrestrial laboratory. Scientists have known this since the Space Shuttle era. NASA researchers grew protein crystals in orbit during the 1980s and found consistent improvements. The problem was that going to space cost hundreds of millions of dollars per mission. It was a scientific curiosity, never a commercial reality, until Varda. Varda Space Industries was founded in 2020 by Delian Asparouhov and Will Brewy. Their insight was simple but radical. The cost of reaching orbit had collapsed. SpaceX had made rideshare missions affordable. Rocket Lab had made reentry vehicles possible without a government contract. Suddenly, the economics of space manufacturing were no longer impossible. The company's pitch to investors was direct. We will build a factory that fits inside a small spacecraft, launch it as cargo on an existing mission, process pharmaceuticals in orbit, and bring them home. The factory goes up, the drugs come down, repeat. By 2021, they had raised enough to begin. By 2023, they were ready for their first mission. In June 2023, Varda's first spacecraft, designated W1, launched aboard a SpaceX transporter rideshare mission. Integrated into a Rocket Lab Photon satellite, the spacecraft carried a small pharmaceutical processing unit and vials of ritonavir compounds. For 8 months, the spacecraft orbited Earth, manufacturing. In microgravity, ritonavir was converted into a specific crystal form, form Roman 3, a metastable variant that is exceptionally difficult to produce reliably on Earth. This form has properties that could make the drug more effective, more bioavailable, and potentially enable new delivery methods that are currently impossible with existing crystal structures. Then came reentry. The capsule, just 3 feet wide, detached from the Photon satellite and plunged back into the atmosphere at hypersonic speed. The outside reached plasma temperatures. And yet, the onboard thermal management system kept the vials inside below 23 degrees Celsius. The crystals survived intact. The capsule landed at the Utah Test and Training Range on February 21, 2024. The vials were shipped to an independent pharmaceutical laboratory for analysis. The results confirmed everything. The space-processed ritonavir had worked. The crystallization was successful. Form Roman 3 had been produced cleanly, stably, and brought back to Earth without degradation. Varda's co-founder posted 3 words on social media that summarized the analysis. "Them space drugs cooked real good." It was, beneath the humor, a historic statement. A private company had autonomously manufactured a pharmaceutical compound in orbit and successfully returned it to Earth, for the first time ever. W1 was proof of concept. What followed was a demonstration of pace. In January 2025, W2 launched aboard another SpaceX rideshare mission. It returned in February, just 6 weeks later, landing this time in South Australia at the Cooniba Test Range. W2 carried additional scientific payloads, including atmospheric sensing instruments, demonstrating that Varda's reentry vehicle has applications beyond pharmaceuticals. W3 launched in March 2025 and returned in May. 2 missions, 2 months. Rocket Lab called it rapid reentry capability. The aerospace industry called it unprecedented for a commercial operator. W4 launched in June 2025. W5 followed the same year, making it 4 launches in a single calendar year. For context, most space companies celebrate 1 launch per year. Varda launched 4. In July 2025, the company raised $187 million in a Series C funding round, bringing total investment to over $328 million. They signed an agreement with Southern Launch for 20 re-entries through 2028, signaling that this is no longer a startup proving a concept. This is a company building an industry. Here is why this matters far beyond the company itself. The pharmaceutical applications of reliable microgravity manufacturing are significant. Monoclonal antibodies, a class of drugs used in cancer treatment, autoimmune diseases, and conditions like Alzheimer's, are among the most complex and expensive medicines in existence. Many of them can only be delivered intravenously because the molecules are too large and viscous to inject under the skin. In microgravity, these antibodies can be crystallized into far more concentrated, more stable forms. Forms that, in some cases, would allow the same drug to be administered as a subcutaneous injection. A simple shot a patient could give themselves at home rather than a multi-hour hospital infusion. For the roughly 50 million Americans who rely on biologics, drugs derived from living organisms, this is not a minor improvement. It is a fundamental change in how and where they receive treatment. And beyond pharmaceuticals, the materials science implications are profound. Fiber optic cables produced in microgravity have shown optical purity that is orders of magnitude better than anything achievable on Earth. Semiconductor materials, advanced alloys, industrial compounds that require crystalline perfection. The space economy has long been promised, it has rarely been delivered. Varda may be the first company to actually close the loop, launching manufacturing into orbit and returning finished product to a paying customer. It would be dishonest to present this as without friction. Regulatory questions remain significant. The FDA has never reviewed a drug manufactured in orbit. What the approval pathway looks like for space-processed pharmaceuticals is still being defined. W1's regulatory delays. The spacecraft was ready to return for months before clearance was granted, demonstrated that the legal infrastructure has not caught up with the technical capability. Scale is also an open question. A microwave-sized factory returning grams of pharmaceutical compound is a proof of concept. Serving the global demand for a blockbuster drug requires something fundamentally different. Varda's current model is to use space-processed seed crystals as templates for large-scale Earth-based manufacturing, a compelling strategy, but one that has not yet been validated at commercial scale. And competition is arriving. Redwire, in partnership with Purdue University, is developing orbital bioreactors. Multiple other startups are exploring the same opportunity. The microgravity manufacturing sector, practically non-existent in 2020, is becoming crowded. But these are the challenges of a real industry forming, not the problems of an idea failing. Step back for a moment and consider what Varda represents. For most of human history, manufacturing has been constrained by the environment of one planet: gravity, atmosphere, contamination, temperature gradients. Every industrial process has been engineered around these constraints, not because they are ideal, but because they are inescapable. They no longer are. For the first time, we have a commercial company routinely operating a factory in orbit, returning finished product to Earth, and raising hundreds of millions of dollars from investors who believe this is a scalable business. Every industrial process has been engineered around these constraints, not because they are ideal, but because they are inescapable. They no longer are, not a government program, not a research mission, a business. The implications extend beyond medicine. If microgravity manufacturing becomes commercially viable, if the economics continue to improve as launch costs fall, the consequences for materials science, semiconductor manufacturing, and industrial chemistry could be extraordinary. The implications extend beyond medicine. We are, in a very real sense, at the beginning of the first, genuinely new manufacturing paradigm in centuries. And it started with a startup, a SpaceX rideshare, and a 3-foot capsule that survived the fire of reentry to bring back something the Earth could not make. That is the story of Varda Space Industries, a company that looked at the oldest challenge in pharmaceutical manufacturing and decided the solution was 500 kilometers straight up. Whether you find that inspiring or absurd probably depends on how you think about audacity, but the crystals came back, the science worked, and the investment is following. This is Orbital Brief. If this video gave you something to think about, subscribe. We cover the technology stories that actually matter every week. And if you want to go deeper on the space economy, the next video is already waiting for you.